Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant-Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a special guest, Mitchell Thompson, who is going to be telling us about his story with diet and lifestyle and recovery. Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So for people who haven't come across you, can you tell us a bit about you and a bit about your story?
Yeah, so my name is Mitchell Thompson. I'm a health professional, personal trainer. I started off as a personal trainer, like most people that I think are former athletes that get involved in the health space, right? And I took a big interest specifically on nutrition. You're not going to like it, but the cover to that book, having an apple on it, isn't the best. But I was, you know, I was a personal trainer who was really diving into the field of nutrition, and I was really exploring sort of, you know, how everybody explores their dietary options. And last November, you know, everything was going normal, and I lived a pretty healthy, you know, lifestyle other than the bad foods that athletes they can get away with because they're able to indulge in it without consequence. So last November, I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. I thought that I had just gastroenteritis. It was one of those ordeals where, you know, I felt the cramping, I felt the bloating, I felt all the flu-like symptoms. And when I went to the hospital, they actually diagnosed me saying that they said I had Crohn's disease, given that they first thought I had ileitis, which again, Crohn's is just a form of ileitis, right? Chronic ileitis. And they thought it was maybe an appendix issue. And they ultimately concluded that it was Crohn's disease. And so, you know, throughout all of November and December, I lost over 45, almost 50 pounds. I went from 198 pounds to 153 pounds. And I was essentially told to do what most people are told to do. I was told to follow a high fiber diet. I was told to eat a lot of greens, a lot of vegetables. I was told to avoid meat. And when everything that the doctors told me to do wasn't working, I decided to venture out on my own, and I came across the likes of yourself, Robert Sives, Sean Baker, Ken Berry, all these different actual doctors who were saying things that were in contrary to what the doctors in little old Missouri were telling me. And lo and behold, I decided to follow what you guys were talking about. And within a few weeks, I found symptom relief. And I'm now about 6 months removed from a strict carnivore ketogenic diet. And I would now say I'm in the true stages of remission. So,
yeah, amazing. So how long did it take you on a carnivore diet to get, recovery from your symptoms of Crohn's and then what you would consider full remission?
Are you familiar with Jordan Rubin from like the 1990s, early 2000s?
I don't know if I am. Who's that guy?
Yeah. Well, he was one of the first people that had like Crohn's and went about promoting a way to relieve the symptoms of Crohn's and IBD.
Okay.
And he had what was known as the Maker's Diet. And so I followed his Maker's Diet, which was, again, it was a lot of like carbs and vegetables, and like there was a super greens blend that you had to drink, you know, and every time I drank it, my cramps got worse, and I was wondering why. And so I followed their protocol for a few weeks. And then when I went straight red meat, salt, and water, the Chaffee protocol, it was about a week that I started seeing symptom relief. And after about 3 weeks, I saw true symptom relief in the sense that I was asymptomatic.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, wow. And that was just straight up beef, lamb, and water?
Just, yeah, not even lamb. It was just the fattiest cut of ground beef I could find. And then it was salt. Yep, I would just douse it with salt water. And then I think it was maybe 2 weeks in I introduced steak. So I started introducing steak about 2 weeks in.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. And then, well, that's great. And then did you get like a biopsy to kind of to see what was going on at some point as well?
Yeah, so it was the end of the year, right? So November was when I got diagnosed, and December is when they were planning to get me in for an emergency colonoscopy. I mean, doc, you tell me. I'm in the hospital. When I was in the hospital, they had me I had essentially no food, no fluid. I had no food, only fluids for 2 days.
Mm.
I didn't eat for 2 days straight. I thought by the third day I would have been cleaned enough for me to be able to have the colonoscopy, but they still wanted to push my colonoscopy out 2 months because it was the end of the year.
Oh, come on. What the hell? That's yeah,
And
that's ridiculous.
and so what they essentially were like, until we can actually get you in for the endoscopy and or for the endoscopy and the colonoscopy, I think they wanted to do three different. They wanted to do the pill, the camera through the top and the bottom.
Hmm.
And by the time my colonoscopy was set, I was already starting to feel I was feeling asymptomatic,
Hmm.
and they said, "All right, we can get you in March. We can
Hmm.
get you in for a colonoscopy in March." And it's January. I'm already starting to feel better. I'm thinking, all right, fine. Schedule me for March. Fine. I don't care. We can do that.
Hmm.
But if you saw in the documentary, by the time March came around, I was already back to my full 198 pounds. I was in, I would say, the early stages of remission. And so when they wanted me to come in for a colonoscopy, I essentially said, do I need one?
Yeah.
Do I need to come in there, get confirmation just for the sake of paying you guys an expense and being able to get the confirmation that I can feel myself?
Yeah.
So I never went back for a follow up to make sure that I was actually, from a biopsy standpoint, cleared of the inflammation in the Crohn's.
Yeah, probably fair enough. You know,
Right.
I, after 3 months, I have had patients that similar sort of story. If they go strict red meat and water, that's a typical sort of timeline that I'd see. Sort of 3-4 weeks, people have serious improvement in their symptoms, if not complete resolution of their symptoms. And then, a couple months later, I've seen people get biopsies and colonoscopies and things like that, or the colonoscopies are clear, and there's actually even no sign on biopsy as well. So it seems to be, well, the good thing about Crohn's is that it does seem to respond pretty quickly if you're really strict on it, which is good.
And you've got to be strict because I
Yeah.
I was eating eggs for a while too because the eggs for me were going to be a staple, but I ended up having a severe allergic reaction to the eggs, whether it was the egg white, whether it was the egg yolk, whatever it was. I was having a severe allergic reaction to eggs fundamentally.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I said, you know what, fine, just ground beef, just salt, just water. We're going to do this until I can actually see if it in and of itself is effective enough to remedy my symptoms, which it was. After a week, I was able to have enough alleviation from my cramping in particular. I mean, Doc, you're familiar.
Hmm.
Crohn's patients, IBD patients, but Crohn's and ulcerative colitis in particular, the level of cramping that the client feels, the level of cramping that is endured through those experiences.
Hmm.
I mean, it's the strictures, right? The intestine, the tube just starts getting real tight because of the strictures. And when they have you trying to eat fiber going through this small constricted hole, it's like
Yeah, it's
the
like a
opposite of
jackass.
what it's
Yeah.
the opposite of what the body's designed to do.
Yeah. Or wants to
And
do.
yeah, after
Yeah.
about a week, I felt the alleviation of those strictures, though. I could feel the fluidity. My barbarigmy wasn't as loud. I could feel the
Mm.
fluidity of the movement of my intestinal tract, my peristalsis, effectively being able to move without those severe cramping like strictures.
Yeah, great. And yeah, that's the thing too with things like Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, these sorts of things. The I guess the plus side of having such a responsive sort of issue is that when you eat the wrong thing, you know about it. You know about it straight away, and there's no
Mhm.
messing around. And it's not like this subtle, like just sort of build up over time. It's just, yeah, you've got horrible pain and cramps, and you've got bloody diarrhea for the next 3 days straight. And it's just like, yep, never doing that again. And so it's very, people get very highly motivated, to be really dialed in to this sort of way of eating. And then they get all the other improvements that you get from being strict on this as well, plus the added benefit of not having to deal with your Crohn's or rheumatoid arthritis and things like that. Whereas when you get things are a bit more subtle, like Hashimoto's, you can get your antibodies in the hundreds or even over 1,000, and you'll just feel a bit rotten. And you'll maybe be on thyroid medication, but maybe it gets worse and worse and worse. You're not on enough thyroid medication anymore. You just don't even really know why you don't feel very good, and you're tired, and you have lack of motivation, and all these other sorts of things. You just don't tie it in to what you're eating because it's just so far removed. It's not like this bam right in front of your face sort of reaction. But when you check their antibodies, they're very elevated, and say, okay, we need to be strict again. And so with something like Crohn's, I actually find that people find it a lot easier to, to stay strict because, they're seeing the negative results so much quicker and so much more dramatically if they don't.
Yeah, staying strict to avoid the strictures.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned your documentary, but that's something that would be great to talk about. You actually documented your journey on this and showed how sick you were, and then when you were coming through it, your recovery. Can you tell us about the documentary and walk us through that as well, and what made you decide to do it in the first place?
Yeah. So I've been a documentarian, we'll say, not in the sense of making documentaries, but just document stuff all the time. I'm a video editor. I've worked in like media for a while since I was in like high school. So as soon as I started realizing the severity of the situation, I mean, the GI specialist came into the hospital after a day when they were doing all the tests and they were trying to figure out what was wrong with me. The CT scans came back negative. They didn't think I had appendicitis. All these things came back negative. So the doc came in and flat out told me, like I was about to die, said, "This is a life-changing thing I'm about to tell you. You have Crohn's disease, and it's something you're going to have the rest of your life. You'll probably need to be on medication the rest of your life. So let's prepare for that lifestyle change right now so you can live the best life that you essentially have left."
Wow.
And I'm over here like, oh my God, like it legit dropped my heart when I'm thinking like, I'm assuming what people experience when they have something way worse like cancer, right?
Mm.
Like I thought I was so far gone. I had never heard of Crohn's disease. So when he says you have insert disease,
Mm.
I was so taken aback that I thought the only thing I can do is document this whole experience wherever it goes.
Yeah.
And it led to me documenting first the initial stages, which was me losing all the weight, being really sick. And I didn't have motivation of what the end narrative would be of the story until I started coming across everybody in the carnivore community. And Doc, I'm gonna tell you, you in particular, you and Sean Baker and Dr. Robert Sives, you guys spearheaded my introduction into what the actual remedies could have been for me without the medication. And it gave me such a positive light at the end of the tunnel that it inspired me to see, well, maybe this could at least be the testimony at the end of the narrative. Let's see if what has been proposed to help overcome this disease, let's see if it holds merit. And so I figured by documenting it, we would truly be able to discover if that N=1 had merit or not.
Yeah.
And after 4 months, lo and behold, we got back to where we currently are. So
Yeah, nice. And so walk us through that. So what does the documentary cover, and what are some of the things that were found in that, and also would probably be surprising to some people?
as you are familiar with, there's the chance within the document. Well, throughout the entire experience, I decided that I was going to record as much as possible because I wanted everybody who had Crohn's or ulcerative colitis or IBD fundamentally, I wanted them to see that their journey could at least be relatable in the sense of what the doctors are telling you, how hopeless and helpless you may feel as a result of what the doctors are telling you. And I figured if that's the case, I'm going to record and document all of my conversations with the GI specialists that I'm assigned to. And as you saw in the documentary, those GI specialists were very revealing in their own limited knowledge, we'll say. So I recorded these GI specialists and I was asking them, hey, could diet, could nutrition, could lifestyle have any effect on my Crohn's in my recovery? And I had two different GI specialists who were from two different clinics who had the same exact spiel when it came to the efficacy of food and lifestyle in remedying any inflammatory disease, let alone inflammatory bowel disease. And so what I was able to do is expose their ignorance for what it was, which they didn't expect a personal trainer and a guy who
Mhm.
is literate in nutrition and who could have a basic enough understanding to read the methodology, the statistical significance, and the actual like the different significant measurements you would measure to qualify a study. They didn't think somebody like me was going to be able to come in to question the integrity of what their approach just was. And you
Yeah.
end up hearing one of the specialists say, the only way that you can get better is through medicine.
Yeah.
Lifestyle, diet will not be able to. They said we have decades of research to even prove it. They were using language like this to try to truly get me to buy into the you need medication the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so throughout the documentary, I was juxtaposing the blatant ignorance of what these GI specialists were saying
Mm.
in contrast to what the likes of geniuses like you, Sean Baker, Robert Sives, and the likes, Callie Means, I had him in there. The difference that you guys are able to express through your own clinical practices were able to be the direct contrast of what they were claiming they had in their clinical practice. And throughout the documentary, you see that. You see what are the GI specialists saying and what is Mitchell following on his own independent research. And
Mm.
as a result, you see by me following the independent route what it ended up becoming in the end, because I documented, like you said, the entire experience from the time I lost the 50 pounds all the way to the point where I gained it all back.
Awesome. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. Yeah, I do remember that and those conversations with the GI specialists. I mean, to be fair to them, this is what we're taught, and and when you are taught X, that this is the best way to treat these things, and you treat them in that way, and you just see that those are the results that you get, and that's it's inside the box thinking. That's always what they say: don't think outside the box, all these sorts of things. Well, now we're really telling people to think inside the box. Don't look outside the box. Ooh, it's a scary place. Just ooh, nice here in this nice warm box. Just stay here and just do what you're told.
Now, with
Yeah.
that though, do you think that there is still a level of you didn't stick with what you were told? Sean Baker didn't stick with what he was told. So what's the difference then in your willingness? Well, it's almost rhetorical. I would say the difference is you actually adhering to the Hippocratic Oath,
Mm.
actually thinking about do no harm, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure they are too. I mean, it's just that this is what they've seen. The thing is that before I knew about this, I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I wouldn't have known about this. I came across this in a very circuitous way where I just wasn't going to eat plants because I knew how toxic they were. And I just wasn't going to do that. And then all of a sudden it was sort of clicked. It was like, well, hold on a second. This is what we've been doing for millions of years. Is there actually something to this? And we're actually carnivores. And then you start seeing Sean Baker, and he's only eating meat, and he's helping patients, and they're getting better. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. There's something to this. And you start looking into the details of the studies, saying, hey, is there more to this? What do we know? What can we prove? And are there studies using meat-based approaches? Actually, there are thousands of them. In fact, they're all in this sort of ketogenic diet sort of model where you're cutting out carbohydrates and replacing with fat and protein, typically from meat. And so you're getting these high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diets, which a carnivore diet is, and you're seeing these massive improvements. And so it's like, hold on a second. And so I was just in a position that I was able to spend 8 hours a day reading papers for months because I was taking time off. In the middle of residency, never would have happened, but
Right. That's fair.
but
So would you say they're just too busy then to continue their education to a sufficient enough degree to almost reverse some of the preconceived notions they have through their field of study?
the biggest thing is they don't, not only do they not know what they don't know, that's there's things that they it's what Mark Twain said, it's not what you don't know that gets you. It's what you know for certain that just ain't so. And so they have been taught that this is the best way to treat disease X. And so, well, why would I be told that in medical school and in residency? I'm now a specialist. I'm board certified. Obviously, this is the best body of knowledge for this specialty. The problem is that that curriculum is set by individuals. Those individuals may not know what they don't know about. And but also that curriculum is also heavily influenced by the food and drug companies, heavily influenced. And so it's this model of here's a problem, here's a pill. And I swear to God, I've seen like some of the this is sort of a problem that I have with some of the 6-year programs that teach medicine. They don't give you a fundamental science degree. You're not taking all the biology and inorganic chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, genetics,
Look what I'm doing
mathematics.
notes on.
Yeah, there you go.
You don't
So
learn that until year 5 in medicals or in biochemistry.
yeah, so and when you're learning these things in medical school, it's very superficial. You're just being told about these different pathways and things like that, but you don't know where they plug into, right? You just learn about these things on their own. So you don't know
Right.
you don't know the terrain. And and so when let's be fair, medical school is a trade school. You're learning a trade. It's the professional schools, you're just learning about a profession or a trade, right? If you take an undergraduate degree, then you have a science background and you have that superimposed trade school on top of that. If you're going just out of high school, it's really just a trade school and you don't have the science background. Some try to incorporate that into it, some do better than others, but I have full on seen, because I think they have to sort of dumb it down for 18-year-olds that are sort of coming into this, that haven't really, done high level stuff. I swear to God, it was like third grade sort of assignment where they had a list of different problems and they had the medication on the other side. And you drew a line. And I saw these kids' homework in the libraries in the 6-year program. And it was like actually just drawing lines on this. I'm like, are these kids like in third grade? Like, what the hell are they
Right.
doing here? This is some weird stuff. And but that's it. Here's the problem. Line it up with the appropriate pill. And that's how we're taught, because that's how the curriculum is set. And they don't realize that there are thousands of studies and randomized controlled trials in humans with thousands of patients showing a very different side to this. The problem is that there's no money in a ketogenic diet, right? So there's no big keto. I mean, the keto is an absence of carbohydrates, right? So you're not going to have a big industry that deals in the absence of something, right? And so if you don't have a product to sell, now they're having keto snacks and all that sort of stuff, but that's garbage too. A lot of those things have a bunch of, artificial ingredients and a bunch of, weird, things that you don't want either. Some are better than others, but either way, you can get very bad stuff as well. And so, the money is in pharmaceuticals and the drug companies and the food companies, and they're the ones funding these sorts of things. When you have, the American Diabetes Associations, they're the biggest funders are like Coca-Cola and Nestle and these sorts of companies. It's like, or the companies that that make insulin and all these other medications for diabetes. Well, that's what you're going to be doing. That's what you're going to be pushing. You're not going to say carbohydrate restriction because your main sponsors sell sugars and carbohydrates. And
Right.
if you carbohydrate restrict, well, then you're going to need less insulin. Well, hold on a second. These guys who pay us, they make insulin and they don't want us to say that. So they don't. So it doesn't get in the curriculum. And it doesn't get taught in residencies, and it certainly doesn't get taught in medical schools. And then the conferences are sponsored by these companies as well. And they absolutely have a say over who gets to talk and what they get to talk about, which is why you have to go to these other independent medical conferences that typically are the are better science and doesn't have the strings attached to the studies that are involved. But the studies exist. I mean, I've spoken to people. I don't know if I mentioned this to you when we were talking online, but when I was on general surgery rotation, um, it was years ago. I was sent to go talk to do a consultation with a lady who had Crohn's. And she was being treated by the GI specialists, and they were on all these different drugs and meds and everything like that. And nothing was really working, and she was getting worse and worse and worse. And they wanted her worked up for surgery to get resect, part of her bowel. And so I was talking to her, and she just made it very clear. She's just like, I really don't want surgery. Is there anything I can do? I was like, so, I know about all these studies um, that have been done in humans, randomized controlled trials in humans, showing that diet and nutrition plays a huge role. And like, why wouldn't it? You're talking about your digestive tract. I mean, that's like saying that, like that like something you inject in your heart isn't going to affect your heart. It has nothing to do with it. Like what? It's literally the organ that's affected. And so it's very funny that they even think that. Um, but yeah, so she was just like, is there anything I can do? And it's just like, I know about these studies, and she's asked me directly. It would be unethical for me to withhold that information, but it would literally be malpractice, right?
Right.
Because I'm withholding information that could help her, carry out her wishes, which is avoid surgery. And so, I told her about it, and it's just like, well, actually, there's these studies that people have been, on this elemental diet, randomized controlled trial in humans, showing that if you put people on this elemental diet, which is just your macros and micros in a shake form, it's ketogenic because it was designed for epileptic kids, that's been shown to be a better treatment to get people out of an acute flare-up of Crohn's than prednisone, steroids, right? And so just not eating certain things was a better treatment than steroids, the gold standard to get this suppressed and settled down. Another one that just got rid of carbohydrates and fiber in Crohn's patients again, and said, how long can we keep them in remission without medication? It was up to 51 months, which is over
Mm-hmm.
4 years. And that's just carbs and fiber. Okay, well, when you take away carbs and fiber, okay, you need fat and protein. And where's that going to come from that doesn't have fiber, right? It's largely just going to be meat, isn't it? And
Mm-hmm.
so, unless you have processed weird stuff. But the point is that they stayed in remission without medications up to 51 months. And then the control group stayed in remission on average 0 months, which is less months, right? And so, when you know that, and there's studies showing that, and there's actually way more studies as well that actually, compound this argument. Um, you have to tell them. So I told her that. And I just said, look, you can look into this. Here are the studies. Here's some things to look up. And she was really excited. She's like, yeah, I'm going to look into that. I'm going to check that out. And it's just like, look, you haven't ruptured anything. This isn't an acute emergency. You don't have a fistula. You don't have leaking, bowel contents into your abdomen or something like that. It's not an acute emergency. It's just the GI guys are like, yeah, this is going in that direction, you know? And so, it's just like, look, if it doesn't work, you don't want to do it. Surgery is always available. That's always going to be there. If there's a problem, we're always here. You make your own decision. She said, yeah, sounds good. So actually giving the patient informed consent and informing the patient on what the available options are, that apparently just pissed these people off. So there's one of these little guys on the GI team that was like eavesdropping, like outside of the room, and didn't come to me and ask me about this, going like, oh, well, what was that about? Just went and went to his boss and was just like, oh, you won't believe what the surgeon was saying to this lady. And they didn't even come to me. They didn't talk to me going like, hey, what are you talking about? We haven't heard any of this. Like, what are you talking about? They went to my head of a department and said, we're really upset about this. What the hell is this about? And we're gonna report him to the medical board. It's like, whoa, easy. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, and so they're like, why don't we just talk to him and find out what he was talking about? So then talk to me, and I was just like, well, look, they're all the, they're like, well, and they said, well, there's no studies in this. There's no studies that actually showed that this worked. And I was like, yeah, there are. There's actually quite a lot. They're like, what do you mean? And I was just like, yeah, there's like half a dozen. I can email them. I can send them to you right now. I have them on my phone. And I sent it to them. And they were like, they had no idea. They had no idea because it doesn't get taught in residency. And if you don't know to look for it, or you don't have an idea of something to look for, you're not going to go look for it. But I had an
Right.
idea. And so I said, are there any studies on this? Sure enough, there are actually quite a lot. But they don't get publicized. They don't get, drug reps coming in to say, hey, here's the new research on ketogenic diet, and you don't need our medications anymore. I'm going to go find a new job. Thanks. It's they don't do that, right? They come and they display the the studies that back up their product, and doctors don't get that all the time. They think that that's like the research wing of the hospital or something like that, as opposed to a sales rep. And
Right.
I swear I've seen doctors in my department, like when I was an intern, that would be there, and they had these, catered lunch. It was like on Tuesdays, we'd have like the drug rep would come in and, you know, buy, have like a, bunch of little buffet lunch sort of thing, and give us their spiel about whatever drug they were hawking. And
What kind of food
and
would they bring in?
how much food?
No, what kind of food would they bring in?
Oh, sometimes it was decent, had like,
Okay, fair enough.
it wasn't anything good, but
But
sometimes it
that's
was
the
like,
point, though, right?
like deep fried shrimp and things like that. That was probably the
Right.
best one. Maybe it'd be like
Right.
a bit of like a, some charcuterie or something like that, but then it would have, just garbage really. But
Right.
at the time when I didn't know any better, and you're just like desperate for food because you just don't have time to breathe, during your intern year. And you're just working crazy hours and things like that. You're just like, food,
Mhm.
yes, dear God, give me that.
And I think that goes back to the idea, though, of why those doctors don't have the time to go through their continued education on their own merit
Mhm.
outside of that boxed curriculum to then discover those sort of things that you inevitably discovered.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And they we're so used to being spoon fed, and we're so used to having a curriculum. We're studying for, our school exams. We're studying for the USMLEs. We're studying for boards. We're just studying and studying and studying. We're just being spoon fed. This is the stuff that you need to know. Okay. Well, I don't care about anything else because I need to
Right.
know this because I need to pass that test. And so you get very very narrow focus.
Very monocular in your medical perspective.
That's it. Yeah, yeah, tunnel vision. And so
Yep.
and then after that, that's just how you've been trained. And so you don't know to look outside. And until someone opens that up for you, you don't go looking on your own. And so, I had that sort of aha moment when I was like, holy crap, like there's just a mountain of research out here that no one's even talking about, no one's looking about. Okay, let's get into it. And it's like a whole new world. But these doctors, like this one lady, she was there. She was just so excited every Tuesday when the drug rep would come. She's like, oh, I'm just so excited. And like, oh, why? Because there's lunch. Because that's why I'm excited. Like, no, we got to learn about studies. We're going to learn about science. Oh, I'm just so excited. And it's just like, they're not the research department. This is a sales rep. They're going to tell you the studies that they want to tell you that push their product in a way that makes their product look the best possible. Like this is not real research. This is
And
a sales.
imagine if that doctor's eagerness could be properly channeled in a way where she's now being able to indulge in the right type of research. Because I
Yeah,
feel bad for that. I mean, imagine the eagerness that lady had.
yeah.
She was really excited to learn all
Mhm.
this stuff. Just imagine if she was able to learn it in an uncorrupted domain, in a field where she could actually take that eagerness and do something good with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing that we can take on ourselves when we see this. We give lectures, to each other within our own department, and do journal clubs and grand rounds. And so, when I'm doing grand rounds and presentations and things like that, like I do it on this stuff. And
That's
so like
awesome.
ketogenic metabolic therapy for the treatment of GBMs and things like that. That's something that my neurosurgical department had not come across before, and they were actually quite taken aback by that. They're like, and some of them even said like, yeah, at first I thought this topic was going to be a bit weird. I didn't know where it was going to go, but yeah, this might there might be something there. I think we should do studies on this. I think we should actually, try to carry this forward. So, um, the interest is there, I think. It's just people don't even know to go look for it,
Right.
and yeah, and I remember the guy that you were talking about that said, just like, oh yeah, no, we have all this proof. We've proven this over years. I'm like, no, you haven't, buddy. No, you really have. Oh, we've proven that diet doesn't do anything. I'm like, no, you might want to check on that one again.
A GI specialist saying that, a
I
GI
know.
specialist saying
Yeah,
that the things going into your intestines don't affect your intestines.
I know. Yeah, that one hurt. But yeah, I think sometimes you just when you're trying to get when you're trying to get something across to a patient, sometimes you just you know you try to word things in a way that's going to be convincing to them,
For sure.
but you can't do that in a way that includes something that's not strictly true. Like if there haven't been studies that you've read saying like, oh, they tried all these different diets and there's no improvement. If you have not read that study, then you cannot make that statement. Even if you believe that that diet doesn't affect it because you were taught that diet doesn't do anything. Oh yeah, no, it's just medication. That's it. No, you need to actually know that there haven't been studies to do that, and there are studies that do that. And so maybe to play devil's advocate, maybe there's some study looking at certain diets, and no, yeah, we had these parameters, we didn't see too much difference. Okay, but that's not every diet, so you can't
Right.
necessarily say that. But
That's
yeah,
not food
it was a bit.
fundamentally, right? Because that's what they
Yeah.
were saying. They were saying food doesn't affect your immune system essentially. And it's like, what?
or
You guys
or
are
your
GI
gut.
special
Yeah,
or your
exactly.
gut,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, what you eat doesn't actually affect your body. No, no, it's
And
completely
by the way,
completely
both
separate.
both of those GI specialists were clinically overweight, but one of them was probably veering on the numbers of being obese.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Did you see them subsequently, with your recovery? No.
no, I was almost willing to go back and actually schedule a consultation or just
Mhm.
send them the documentary, but I got too busy with things.
Well, it might be worthwhile. It's obviously not going to help you, but it might help other
Right,
people. If you can get
right.
them to open their eyes, because a lot of times, a lot of doctors I know, who have come to this realization, it's from a patient. It's from a patient who
Mm,
has actually come in and actually, basically showed them up, and not necessarily done it in a way that was mean or aggressive, but just saying, hey, you missed this. You know, I asked you if food would help me. You said definitely not. The only thing I did was change my diet. I'm off all medications and I'm completely recovered. You know, this is something that thousands of people around the world are doing. This is your specialty. It is imperative that you look into this. You have a duty to your patients, your future patients, to at least look into this, because you can say, well, that's just lucky. You got lucky. That's just one person. But there's just tens of thousands of people around the world improving this, and there are doctors around the world doing studies showing that that dietary interventions like the elemental diet and like the carbon fiber restriction makes a massive improvement in Crohn's disease in particular. This is something that it behooves you to check out for your patients. And if you didn't know about it before, that's fair enough. Now you do. And so now if you don't do anything about it, that's on you. And so that could you could be harming patients from here on out. There's actually a case series that just got published with 10 Crohn's disease patients, and with clinically objective markers and studies and all these sorts of things showing that this just went away in all 10 of these patients. So, it's something that I'm sure we'll probably, do more clinical trials on, like specifically a carnivore diet, and try to do like an RCT or something like that. It'd be super easy. I mean, I think you only have to do it for a couple months, and
right.
it wouldn't take that long, but that would really, really rock the boat. But I think there's more than enough evidence to support attempting it. It's not going to hurt them. First, do no harm. Well,
Hmm.
eating meat doesn't cause harm, right? Oh, you have to eat fiber. You have to eat fiber. Do you? What happens when we have appendicitis, or we have a bowel resection, or we have diverticulitis? You say, eat a low residue diet. What does that mean? No fiber, things that you absorb and you don't excrete. Okay, so that means no fiber, because, just eating meat, you liquefy and absorb 98+% of the meat that you eat. And so, why are we saying now for Crohn's that, with strictures, that you want more bulk? That's
Makes
the
no
good thing.
sense.
Fiber heals everything. No, it damn well doesn't. It makes things worse. And and so, that's the thing. It doesn't matter how beautiful your theory is, and it doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with experiment, it's wrong. So they told
Binding.
you to do X, you did Y, and you got a completely different result than they predicted. So their theory is not able to predict outcomes very favorably. So that means it's a bad theory. Our theory has been working pretty damn well so far. People have been taking this on themselves, and they've been just saying, okay, well, this guy's telling me one thing, Anthony's saying something else. Give it a try. I've tried this guy's thing. That sucked. All right, let's try this one. Look at that. It's better. So,
Lo and behold.
and it works. So, but like David Unwin, Dr. David Unwin, he's a GP over in the UK. So he's like a family practice physician. That was his sort of moment, as a patient came into him. She hadn't been in there for a year, and he sort of saw that she was offered diabetes medications and metformin and things like that for like 9 months. So he called her in to make an appointment so he could basically give her a talking to about not taking her medication. What a naughty patient. You're not taking your medication. And she let him have it. She said, well, why the hell didn't you tell me that eating carbohydrates and sugar and things like that is going to spike my blood sugar? I have diabetes, and I'm trying to control my blood sugar. And you never said once that cutting out carbs would control my blood sugar better than medication, that eating carbohydrates would slam up my blood sugar. It's like, I don't even think you're qualified to practice medicine, if you don't even know that. And he was just like, oh, hold on a second. And so he started looking into it, and he started like, she said, I haven't taken my diabetes medications in the last 9 months because I haven't needed to, because my blood sugar is perfect. I don't have diabetes anymore as long as I eat like this. And why don't you know about that? And he was the type of person that, that is going to look inward and not try to just
Could admit
lash
he was
out and be
wrong.
defensive. Yeah, exactly. He's
Yeah.
like, oh, Jesus, have I been completely wrong this whole time? He started looking into it, and like, I had no idea, but there's tons of studies showing this. Why wasn't I taught this? Why wasn't, because it doesn't pay, it doesn't pay the bills, and they don't pay reps to do it and things like that. So, who knows? You could be that your experience with those doctors, relaying those to those doctors, could be that catalyst you need, or they might completely blow you off and ignore it. But you know what? It's out of your hands at
At
that
least I
point. At least you
tried.
tried. And
That's a good perspective. I never looked at it as the being able to potentially change the being able to change their mind. For me, was already far gone when I rewatched the documentary back as I'm editing it, hearing their ignorance repetitively.
yeah. Well,
But I didn't think about the wisdom that you're kind of ascribing, which is, yeah, but think beyond just the limitations of how you think they're going to be closed-minded, and try to imagine a world where, if they were open-minded, how that could then actually affect other people.
Yeah, and even their own department. And if they see this and they start looking at and finding these studies, like, oh, Jesus, hold on a second. Well, maybe we should do more studies and bigger studies. Maybe we should do a study in this department, maybe, and then start talking to their colleagues about it as well. And and if their colleagues are like, you're crazy, but then you start doing it for your patients, and you start getting good results, better results, and they're coming off medications, you once you see these results, you can't unsee them. And so that's why I and others are so passionate about this, is because it works. And you apply these principles to people, and their lives get better, and you're actually doing your job as a doctor, which is making them better, not just papering over their symptoms with pills that are actually going to make them sicker in the long run. And that's it's very satisfying work, as opposed to just this defeated sort of profession that we're in now, that no matter what you do, people are just getting worse and worse and worse, and your bodies are just decaying and decaying and finally dying. And we're just desperately trying to tape them together and use Bondo and duct tape to sort of strap them along, and it's just all falling apart. And most people burn out. There's a huge burnout rate among doctors. There's a huge substance abuse problem and suicide rate in doctors, one of the highest for all of those of the professions.
Wow.
And I think that's probably why, because it's just you spend your entire life, you work extremely hard, study for a very long time, and doing these grueling exams and all these sorts of things. And then you're there and you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm going to help people. And you're seeing your patients just get slowly worse and slowly worse and slowly worse. And they just all die, and they all get worse. And then you start having health problems, and you're overweight, and your blood pressure's up, and you're pre-diabetic. Now you're diabetic, and you're doing all the things right. You're following all your own advice, and you're just still getting worse and worse and worse. And it's depressing. And it's just hearing that's depressing me. And and then when they sort of see the light and they see like, well, actually there's a different way, there's a better way, and it actually works, then you just have to bang that drum, because um, you know, the alternative is pretty bleak.
So do you think we're just early in this transition phase, in this paradigm shifting from, let's say, the medical industrial complex, the the special interests involved that have had a vice grip on our nutritional literacy? Do you think we're just so early in this transition? Is that why there's still so much uncertainty?
Yeah, we're either early on in that transition. Well, we are early on in that transition, but we can only call it a transition if it actually changes.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So, as long as we don't get completely shut down, by the multi-trillion-dollar powers that be, uh, then yes, this is an early stage of that, and that's and that's normal, because it takes a while for this information to get out, but the truth will out. And lies get around much quicker, usually because people pay to circulate them. The more that these meat-based carnivore diets, ketogenic diets improve people's lives and get more information on this, and more people trying it and speaking about it and going, hallelujah, this is so much better. The more you see these really weak, garbage epidemiological studies coming out of places like Harvard and Stanford from these vegan propagandists such as Dr. Gardner and Willett, who say that, oh well, eating red meat, oh has this association with cancer or something like that. And you look at it and it's just complete garbage. But then the media outlets and things like that, whose major sponsors are the food and drug companies, and one of the reasons that they pay the most money is because you have to back them up in other stories, not just run their ads, but they own you. And so when people are coming, so you're not going to be able to run ads or run news stories and things like that besmirch those industries or challenge those industries. And when there is a challenge, you're basically, you're beholden to them to go out and make these garbage sort of paper, reports about, oh, red meat can cause diabetes and this and the other. Well, accept that we have clinical trials in humans showing that putting them on a high-fat meat-based, heavily meat-based ketogenic diet reverses diabetes. So why is it now causing diabetes in this epidemiological study that you did from a survey to a bunch of people and asked them what they ate in the last 2 years? It's like, how would you ever know? So an actual experimental design study is obviously out, trumps that sort of garbage. But I saw the Wall Street Journal come out with this the other day, and they're just talking about all this epidemiological studies that show X, Y, and Z. It's like, I'm sorry, but there's experimental data that shows the exact opposite. And so that is just ridiculous that they're even putting that out. But they're being paid to. They're not necessarily being paid to write that article, but
Right.
they may be. But because the media companies and corporations, their largest um, uh, you know, advertisers are the food and drug companies, they can't. I mean, people have spoken about this, different like CEOs, different news
This is stuff
network.
Callie Mean talks about, right?
Yeah.
Callie Mean's his biggest thing. I mean, they just went to the U.S. Senate and they had a whole confrontation on trying to shift a lot of the standards that we have in our ingredients. And what did the Atlantic write about it?
Oh yeah,
That
exactly.
it was woo woo me a meeting of woo woo science.
That's it. That's it. I forget who it was, but they were saying that uh oh no, that was it. Um, so I was actually interviewing Gary Taubes yesterday. So he's
Plenty
a
of his books.
science journalist and writer. He's an
Oh
actual
yeah.
investigative journalist. He actually does actual journalism instead of this, propaganda stuff. And so he was telling me that he spoke to, was it Roger Ailes, that founded Fox News, and Fox News is only one sort of talking about the Senate hearing. You didn't see that on CNN or MSNBC or NBC or ABC or any of the major networks. So at least someone did. And, people have various opinions on Fox News, but uh, that's not really the point. The point is that almost no one aired this. You could only watch it on one source. But he was talking to Roger Ailes, or telling a story about this, where he said that he knew that there was all these problems with health and this, that, and the other, but he was saying that even he's like, we could never run a story like this that would go against the drug companies, because they just are major advertisers, and if we ran a story like that, they'd pull their ad dollars, and it would just sort of tank the network. um you know Now they might have other sorts of revenue sources and things like that. It may not be as impactful, but that's a major issue that people have to contend with in the media. They bought their silence, basically. They bought their support, because if you piss them off and they pull that ad revenue, you just take a huge dive, and it could sink your organization. And
If you don't mind me asking, so why do you think then let's say the non-clinical practicing doctors, the social media doctors that have PhD or MD next to their name yet aren't practicing and seem as though or behave as though they're being paid by these special interests? If they're not being paid, what is the incentive for a lot of these people? Is it just the immediacy? Like if we're talking about like a Lane Norton, is there the immediacy of them just trying to get this information out and espouse their expertise in a domain without actually doing the research and just espousing ignorance? Or is there special interests in line that keep that sort of narrative going? What is the incentive for certain
well,
people to espouse a lot of these wrongly noted studies, we'll say?
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. Well, they could very well be paid to do it. Not necessarily all of them are. Some of them will be. I mean, they do go out and pay social media influencers, especially ones with big accounts. And when aspartame got put on the carcinogen list for the WHO, there's a huge outcry from all these influencers and things like that. At the same time, going like, "Oh no, this is ridiculous," and a lot of them were shown to have been paid to say that. And some of them didn't disclose it properly, and so they tried to sort of sneak it under the radar that they're actually being paid to do this. They didn't say who they were being paid by: the American Beverage Association, the ABA. So like, oh yeah, ABA. No one knows what the hell that is. You look it up, and it's okay, American Beverage Association. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it's a lobbying group for the Coca-Colas and Pepsis of the world that are pushing their sodas and all that sort of stuff. And so you don't know that. And so, some of the people got warnings from the FTC, threatened that they could be fined $50,000. That's up on the FTC website. That's public information. So they had, written public warnings about these sorts of things. And so that does happen. And, some of these people, they just want to be relevant. They're clout chasers. And, and, you know, it, a lot of them, because they're not working, like I have a job. I just, I just work, 12 hours
Exactly.
today. And, so I don't derive, the bulk of my income from my online work. This is purely a labor of love because it's something, because it works and it helps people. And that's what I care about. And so I spend extra time in the middle of the night doing these things because it helps people. And yeah, I get some ad revenue now because my channel is big enough. But I did not for a long time. And so, this was purely for that. And I worked. I got, I make way more money in my job than I do from this stuff. And I like it that way. I'm not trying to make this online stuff my job. These other guys are, and girls, they're not practicing doctors. They don't have a real job. And I think that's probably a major thing. They don't have a real job. So they think that Instagram and, social media is the real world. It's not the real world. It's ridiculous. And so, how do they get paid? People pay them to make certain, TikTok videos and this and that's. And, they'll get ad revenue and so on. But a lot of it, they're being paid to do this sort of stuff. Because when you build up a channel that's big, you get paid a lot. I mean, you can look this up. If you just Google, what would you get paid for, if you had an Instagram channel of 100,000 people on it or something like that, or TikTok of this, that, and the other, you'll find websites that tell you like, well, this is the sort of the average earning for this size of a channel. Right. And so if you're going to do a reel, or you're going to do a post, or you're going to do this, and that you should be charging within this range. It is insane how much you can charge. Like, so for my size of an account, on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, I looked this up, and it's just like, it's anything from like $1,000 to $5,000 a post. Just for a post, if it's like a reel, it could be more and things like that. So, when somebody does like a minute reel, talking about the benefits of this product, and you're being paid by the American Beverage Association, I can only assume they're making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And if they have 2 million people on TikTok and 500,000 people on Instagram, like, some people have, I mean, you're making tens of thousands of dollars potentially, and doing that sort of thing. And, so, if they're not working as a doctor, how else are they making their money? And
that was my biggest concern. My biggest concern is the doctors that are out here actually boots on the ground, affecting clients one-on-one and seeing the effects of the words that they say on other people's daily lives. The difference of that versus hiding behind a screen and not having to see the implications of your words.
Yeah. That's a big one, is that if you don't actually have to deal with the repercussions of your advice, then, should you really be giving that advice? Probably not.
Right.
If you're not seeing patients saying, oh yeah, this is good, and this is what you want to do, and all that sort of, oh, that's dangerous, you don't want to do that. Well, if you're not actually treating patients, how the hell do you know? You don't know. It's all theoretical. Oh, but I have a study. Fuck your study. I don't give a shit, because I actually see real people in real life, and their health gets better and their lives improve, and they come off medications, and their blood work and their exams and their imaging improves. So I really couldn't care less what any given study says, because you can get a study that says anything. Doesn't matter.
Methodology, statistical significance, all of that you can manipulate.
You can manipulate all these sorts of things. And at the end of the day, if your study says that, eating meat is going to cause cancer and diabetes, and yet you're reversing diabetes, and it's going to cause high blood pressure and all these sorts of things, and yet and autoimmunity is going to get worse. They're trying to say this now too, that meat causes autoimmunity. Well, that's funny, because, when people go on and then when they only eat meat and nothing else, a lot of times their autoimmunity goes away. Exactly. Case in point. So that's the only thing that matters. So, you have the the vegan doctors of the world who's saying that if you eat meat, you will worsen your autoimmunity. And so you could believe that. You could believe that information. They have, studies or some sort of epidemiology to back up what they're saying. Possibly, it's not going to be very good evidence, but they have something that they can hang their hat on to lie to you about. But it doesn't matter because you did it and it did the opposite. So it doesn't matter what their study says. It just does not matter because it doesn't apply to you. Even if it applies to everybody else on earth, it didn't apply to you. So that study does not matter to you. And when you're seeing, as a doctor, more and more of your patients completely reverse heretofore thought to be irreversible diseases, you'll be committing malpractice if you did not at least tell your patients about that, who are suffering from those same issues. I've seen so many cases of diabetes reversed that when I have a patient that comes in with diabetes, it would be malpractice and unethical at that point for me not to tell them about these dietary interventions. They would never even have to take medications in the first place, or they could come off their medications eventually for most people. That's unethical, it's immoral, it's malpractice. And so they're not doing these sorts of things. They're just talking a lot of trash, hiding behind a screen. Most of them are just pissant little, weaklings, so they have to stay behind their screen. Even Lane Norton, when I came up to him at a Denver conference, I tried to be nice to him, and I tried to pat him on the shoulder, try to shake his hand, be like, "Hey man, how's it going?" Whatever. He was just like, dude couldn't speak. He was just like, it's just like, yeah, you've been talking a lot of shit. It's a little different when you're standing in front of me, isn't it? And I have no problem, being nice to people and bearing the hatchet and things like that. I mean, he's one of these guys that's going around saying that I'm a fake doctor too. So, well, he's heard from my lawyer as well that he does that again. His ass is getting sued. But these sorts of things, it's very different when you're in front of people and you're talking to them face to face. People are actually a lot more cordial because there's real chances of something happening when you're sitting next to each other, or at least there's that you're there in reality. Back in the day, problems were, it's so much nicer.
More easily resolved.
Much more cordial. People were much more professional, this, that, and the other. Because if you started speaking out of line, someone's going to pop you. They're going to knock you in the teeth, and everyone's going to be like, yeah, well, deserved it. Don't act like that. Now you got all these little, beta crybaby losers that they just talk all this shit, do all this sort of stuff. And then when someone kicks their ass, oh, you're not allowed to do that. Like, well, maybe we should though, And so
throw them on the rugby field,
Well, that's it,
throw them on the pitch.
or, doing what they used to do is, throw on some boxing gloves, go in the ring, go at it.
That's what and see, that's the thing. When you're talking about being a boots on the ground clinician, clearly I'm not a doctor. But as a personal trainer, especially coming from a more educated at this point perspective on how to train people, like the last 4 years, 5 years, really being engrossed in a different approach of training has been one of fixing their biomechanics, their posture, right? Making sure their fascia is properly hydrated so they can circulate blood, nutrients, they can hydrate more properly. So for me, when I'm training people, it feels like malpractice if I don't immediately address the baseline things that they need to fix. Whereas they come in and they're thinking, I want to gain muscle, I want to lose fat, get me sweaty, get me healthy. And I go, slow down. There's an approach to this that requires a level of due diligence if we're going to actually get those results that you're looking to achieve. And so if I'm sitting there just trying to get a paycheck saying, I can easily make anybody sweat for an hour. Let me just make them sweat for an hour, get done. Whatever. Don't worry about their results. Don't care if in a month they come back and they haven't made any improvements. And so I feel like I'm almost engaging in malpractice if I wasn't at least contributing to a certain level of baseline changes in their foundation. And those always come from a understanding first and foremost of what needs to be changed. And I didn't understand as a trainer 4 or 5 years ago the implication of posture, fascia, connective tissue. I just didn't understand all that. I thought it was all isolation, just hypertrophy, bodybuilding, muscle stuff. And the more I got engrossed in the science and did my own independent due diligence outside of the curriculum that was given to me as a personal trainer, again, I'm not trying to compare medical school to being a trainer, but the idea, though, of just being boxed in and then having a prescribed set of protocols that you can give any person that's coming to see you for a specific outcome, it takes more than just being in that box. And it wasn't until I found myself outside of that box that I was really being able to do the thing I had set out to do in the first place, which was actually help people. Yeah. And if you're not even in a clinical setting and you have PhD by your name or MD next to your name, it's like, what are you actually doing when you're trying to help people online if you haven't in your own right helped people directly boots on ground?
Yeah, well, that's it. You know, because you can give this advice, but you're not following it up. You're not seeing these patients day after day. You're not following them up. You're not doing their blood work. You're not talking to them and you know and going through their issues and seeing what's going on. You know, you're just saying whatever you're saying, and you're yelling at anybody who disagrees with you, and you're mob liking all the people that toot your horn. So it's a lot of confirmation bias. It's a lot of different different these little bubbles that they're in. They say that carnivore people are in a bubble, and I'm sure to a degree that's true, but you can't be in a bubble in a clinical practice. Exactly. Because you put people on a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet or whatever, you do some sort of intervention, you're going to have to deal with the negative cases as well, if there are any. And so, you can't just hide behind confirmation bias where just everything you're seeing online is positive, 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 because that may not be the case, Right. And so if your interventions really aren't working very well, and the majority of people are getting worse, not better, you will see that in a clinical practice. And if you keep doing it, well, then that's malpractice, isn't it?
Right.
But at least in my practice, that doesn't happen. It's the exact opposite. And, and I talk to people, I tell them exactly what their bloods are looking at, why they're wrong, why they're, off like that. I can tell them, I can point at the things that they're eating and show them on their blood work, what this is doing to them, in certain respects. And you talk about it and you just say, okay, if you change the way you're eating, this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to feel. This is what you're going to experience. And this is what's going to happen to your weight, your lean body mass, and your blood results. And then it does, and so, it's, and everybody's sort of different, and they all have their own idiosyncrasies. Things happen at different times, but they all sort of improve. If they weren't, they were just getting worse, they wouldn't keep coming back. Right. And like my paradigm in my medical practice is not like, these other things where like, why do we just need return customers? We need to see them as many times and milk as many office visits, things. No, I don't want that. The whole point, like if you go to a doctor, you have a chest infection and you're just like, all right, you're going to need to come back to me 3 days a week for basically the rest of your life, or this is just never going to get better. You get a new doctor, right? So my whole model in my medical practice is I'm going to give you the skills that you need and the tools that you need to not need to come back. And that's the
Doc, I'm telling you this right now. Self-Sustained Training is the company that I made for my personal training. Mm-hmm. And I named it that because I want to train my clients to never need another personal trainer ever again.
Nice.
You teach them to get educated enough in their own right to be their own sustainable, healthy coach to where they then don't have to outsource that any longer.
Yeah.
That's not a good business model as a personal trainer, though, because for me, well, this is where I'm glad you even hesitated, because for me, where is the good business model? The product in and of itself is so quality that my client, I almost hesitated calling them patients because I'm dealing with a doctor. Mm. My clients, they all have been with me for, the majority of my clients, 80% of them have been with me for over 4 years. Mm. Not because they need to, but because they actually appreciate the product that they're getting in regards to seeing the results from that service they're seeking out. And I have clients where I'm, again, not a doctor, but I'm looking at their blood work. I'm measuring as much as I can from a non-clinical side, markers that can actually be gauged for improvement, or the opposite, which I've had 0 clients at this point that haven't had some improvement in their markers when I utilize keto as a metabolic therapeutic. Almost all of my clients that come in, I tell them, look, whether you're an ethical vegan, whether you're somebody who is just blatantly ignorant and doesn't know what food you're eating, whether you're just on a standard American diet as a result of conveniency, whatever it is, I'm going to explain to you how we need to reset your metabolism, open up your lipolytic pathways, and we can get into the nuance of the nerdiness of it, so we can hyperactivate the ability to burn fat in the first place while turning down your body's overproduction of insulin and its dependency on carbs. But before I can say that, I have to explain to them, right, the entire biochemical model of how we get ATP. And when I'm getting into the nuances of really trying to describe to them what's happening biochemically, you can see it on their face. There's this look of like, I didn't know I was coming to school today. Yeah. I didn't realize I was going to be learning science. But every single client has understood the necessity and the importance of being educated on those sort of fronts enough so they can eventually become self-sustained. So they don't ever need another personal trainer ever again.
Which is great. And the thing is too, is that I try to affect that as well. People do keep coming back to me, but I don't need to see them all the time. It's like, once a year, twice a year, it's like a well baby check. And they come in like, hey, I'm doing great. This is awesome. Check my bloods again. Awesome. And they're happy about it. But I get a lot of new patients. I get a lot of people that keep coming in because they keep hearing from other people that like, hey, actually this actually works. Actually losing weight, I'm coming off medication, not going on more, and getting better and healthier and all these other sorts of things. And they're finding things that other doctors aren't even looking for, and it's really helped. And so I get a lot of people. And so, I mean, even just today, I saw someone for the first time and she's like, yeah, I need to make an appointment for my mom and actually my sister too. I'm going to make appointments for them. They need to come hear this stuff.
That's awesome.
So it's actually difficult. I've got a very long waiting list for new patients to come in because it's it works. And so, I get people, see them on the front end, see them several times, get things going, get things on plan. Some people need a bit more hand holding, and that's fine. And other people are a bit more self-sufficient, and that's fine too. And then, but we get there in the end, and then I see them every few months, and then once every 6 months, and then once a year, and then I just get Christmas cards saying doing great. So and I like that. I want that. Like I don't. That's the thing. The thing is it's a great business model, because if you actually have demonstrated results that work and allow people to get real results, they're excited about it and they talk about it, and you get more new people coming in all the time. If we're the only ones doing this, like there's plenty of sick people out there, and so, we're not going to run out of new patients and clients anytime soon. Even though I hope we do, I would love to get back to just doing, trauma surgeries, for people that have had accidents and things that were unavoidable. And, this avoidable stuff, this has to go. This isn't real medicine. This is just basic living. You just need to know the basic skills to live your life and be healthy. And we've forgotten that. We've had that driven out of our head and our living memory. That's what we've done. That's what's happened. But, once we correct that, when doing things like this and getting us out there, and, Callie Means and everybody going, to Washington, which is amazing. Then we can get back to doing real medicine, which is all the accidents, emergencies, traumas. I'd love to get back to that. I love doing surgery. It's a lot of fun.
Look, the idea of, to me, surgeons like are some of the most, we got to protect them at all costs, because the idea of you guys like going in and actually performing the surgery from a practical standpoint, that is, I mean, you guys are just heroes to the 10th degree. I was thinking about nurses when I was in the hospital. Nurses in and of themselves, in their own right, are such crucial components of even the most basic part of going into the hospital, just
Yeah.
making you feel comfortable, giving you that reassurance. But to actually go in and perform, is that what you did? Like, were you an orthopedic surgeon?
No, no, I'm you know, been studying neurosurgery. So I've been working in
Oh,
neurosurgery.
neurosurgery.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
So yeah,
right.
so like,
Even
traumas,
more
you have
so.
like blood in your brain, you're doing sort of craniotomies, craniectomies, and letting the swelling pump out, getting blood off the brain, sucking out, big massive clots and things like that, dealing with aneurysms, AVMs,
So
things
that's
like
mainly
that.
what you did before you started going into more just like more of a like a general practitioner sort of private practice, or is that what you still do?
I still do that, but more part-time. So I do more
Gotcha.
private work. So I do sort of like private surgical assisting in neurosurgery at the moment. And then I have my private practice just because my friend who had this practice was sort of forced into retirement and didn't have anybody to take over his patients. And I didn't want them to just sort of not have anybody. And so
That's
I sort of
amazing.
did that. And it's also very rewarding, seeing this sort of
Yeah,
thing. And I've sort of been there part-time and come in on my days off and see patients and just help out just because I enjoyed it for free, for the last 5 years, and
that's
so,
amazing.
I knew the patients, I knew all these sorts of things, that he'd been pushing a carnivore diet on his patients for 5 years because of me. And, I would come in and talk to them about it and give them help and all that sort of stuff. And, so, I felt that it was something that, I should do.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, but the plan is to continue on and finish up neurosurgery.
See,
Yeah.
because I have so many people that come to me as a trainer or health consultant, health professional. At this point, I do more in-office consultations than I do actual training.
Mm.
I'm actually opening up a gym next month, which I'll go
Nice.
back into the training. Yeah, it's more of like you're talking about people don't want to fight, they don't want to put the gloves on. I teach people boxing and Muay Thai, so I essentially
Nice.
use combat as a form of cardio to
Mhm.
get all of my patients in the gym to do the bare minimum from a biomechanical standpoint that is actually going to fix the baseline problems like in their walking mechanics, let alone in their posture. And so by utilizing something more anthropologically appropriate, like the idea of throwing a punch is similar to like throwing a spear or throwing a rock, right? So the biomechanics of utilizing that as an outlet on top of the decompressing of stress, right? Of punching and kicking things out. I have so many people that tell me, "You've changed my life, Mitchell. Oh my goodness, you're doing God's work." And I'm sitting here thinking, like, but do you know about Anthony Chaffee? Do you know about the Sean Bakers, the Robert Siveys? Like, do you know about these guys that are doing actual God's work in the sense of being able to have more? There's more on the line when you're in somebody's cranium and you're having to do neurosurgery than you are talking to somebody in an office about not eating peanut butter.
Well,
So,
yeah. Well, I mean, when you're doing neurosurgery, it's just sort of, horses out of the barn. Yeah, there's just a problem. There's an
for
emergency.
sure.
Something has to get done, and so, but the hope is that if more people start getting onto this, they'll stop having those chronic changes and issues and degenerative spines and cancers and things like that. Hopefully, that will go down, will start to recede and become more rare. And when if they're needed, they're needed, but hopefully they're not needed nearly as much. And we just have a lot more free time to like read studies that we were never taught in medical school. I think that would be a great change. Mitchell, thank you so much. Unfortunately, I have to run to
For
another
sure.
meeting, but it's been an absolute pleasure, man. It's been great to talk to you. I'm really glad we are able to do this. Thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. And please let us know where people can find you on social media, find your documentary, and find more of your work.
Again, I appreciate you having me. It's surreal because I was debilitated in a bed watching the likes of you, Robert Sivey, Sean Baker, everybody. Gary Fettke was another one that you got me
Oh,
on,
that's
actually.
great. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. He was actually all of you guys were in the documentary, which is awesome. So like,
Mhm.
there's always for me this nostalgic like. I have my teachers always there with me to prove that their efforts are actually substantial in where I'm currently at. So my documentary, you can go on YouTube and just type in how keto cured my Crohn's. So it's how keto cured my Crohn's. The reason I use keto, not carnivore, is just because I did add a little almond butter in there in the beginning stages, so it'd be
Ugh,
disingenuous. I know.
disgusting.
Listen, one of my carnivore people was like, you've got to change the apple to a steak. Like that's the first
Yeah,
thing you've got to do on the book.
that'd be good. Yeah.
So, yeah, you can find me on Instagram at mitch.thompson, mitch.Thompson. But yeah, the main thing is go watch the documentary, especially if you follow the carnivore community and the holistic approach that carnivore and keto can be used for as a metabolic therapeutic, specifically for debilitating diseases like IBD and Crohn's. Take a look at the documentary and see it for yourself so you can actually understand the effectiveness, the actual weight of the words that everybody in the carnivore community, namely these doctors, the weight of it that it actually holds. It has changed my life. And without the work that you and the likes of other doctors are doing, Anthony Chaffee, I wouldn't be where I'm currently at. I would probably be on Entyvio or prednisone or one of these immunosuppressants, and I would probably be as helpless and hopeless that a lot of people before this point had probably felt. So yeah, you can find me on YouTube, self-sustained training. That's where my documentary is. Find me on Instagram, social media. It's all there.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes, and people can find you there. Mitchell, thanks so much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure, and great talking to you, and really, really glad that you're sharing your story with people. I'm sure it will help a lot of people.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.